Thank you for joining me for this listening session. Today, I'd like to cover the relationship between Atonement Lutheran Church in Muskego and a very small town in rural El Salvador called Tepeagua. Tepeagua and Atonement Lutheran Church have had a relationship for 21 years. Today, I want to tell you about some of the projects that we have done together. I especially want to focus on the water project. We are at a very critical stage in the dream of giving water to every home in Tepeagua. So I want to review that situation with you. And I will be asking for your help so that we can again make the dream of water to every home a reality in our sister town, Tepeagua. When you take a look at the photos in this slide, I think you understand that El Salvador is a very pretty place, especially during rainy season. There's greenery and flowers absolutely everywhere. When you look around, you can see mountains, and a lot of those mountains are volcanoes. It turns out there are a large number of volcanoes, and several of them are still active in El Salvador. Now, that will turn out to be quite significant because the presence and the past activity of all of those volcanoes will make it very difficult to drill good water wells in this country. Let me just remind you where El Salvador is. It's this little tiny red area in Central America on the globe. El Salvador is quite small. It's about the size of the state of New Jersey, but packed into this state are 6.5 million people. So a lot of volcanoes and a lot of people. In comparison, Wisconsin has about 3 million people. El Salvador has a coast on the Pacific Ocean. If you were to fly into El Salvador, and I hope you will visit someday, you'd fly into the international airport, which is now called Oscar Romero International Airport, and it's right here. It was built here decades ago along the Pacific Ocean in the hopes that tourism would develop along the ocean. It turns out that the ocean is really pretty rough along most of El Salvador, and although it has recently become popular for surfers, it's probably not going to be a terribly popular location for family type resorts and beach time. Again, very rough oceans, very, very strong undertows through most of the Pacific Ocean along San Salvador. I have circled the little port town of La Libertad. Now, our tiny town, Tepeagua, is actually a part of La Libertad. It's up high on a plateau over the ocean. It's only a few miles from downtown La Libertad, but the roads are incredibly rough, and it may take 45 minutes or an hour to make the trip from Tepeagua up high on a plateau down into La Libertad. La Libertad has recently been in the news because it hosted some international surfing competitions. If you fly in, you will probably spend your nights in San Salvador. This is where the hotels and guest houses that we tend to use when we travel are. This is also where the central offices for the Salvadoran Lutheran Church are located. To get from San Salvador to Tepeagua is highly dependent on how much traffic there is. But again, an hour to an hour and a half to make that trip. Well, how did our little town of Tepeagua actually come to be? It's not an ancient place. And to understand the background of Tepeagua, we need to recall that there was a pretty bloody civil war in El Salvador between 1979 and 1992. Most of the families that currently live in Tepeagua were rural families during the Civil War, and most fighting took place in the country rather than in the cities. So our current Tepeagua families fled their homes and moved into the city of San Salvador. They set up a home wherever they could find empty space and in essence became squatters all over the city of San Salvador. When the peace accords were reached and the Civil War ended, the land that our families were squatting on became very valuable. And it wasn't long before they were moved to Tepeagua by the government. That's a nice way of putting it, that they were moved. These families were displaced. And what this meant is military with guns showed up and you were put into pickups and told to grab what you could. And then you were deposited in this place that won't even show up on a map, but we now call it Tepeagua because there is a Tepeagua River there. And that river will turn out to really be all that is there at the point that these families were displaced and left in this area. The Lutheran Church in El Salvador was very aware that these situations were going on, and they did accompany the people. They were there with food and whatever kind of aid and support they could offer. The Lutheran Church immediately bought some land in Tepeagua and built a church, which is still there today. We'll see pictures of it. Most of our families, though, never achieved legal ownership to the land where they now began to build their newest home. And these legal issues of land ownership will influence the way that we've done certain projects with them. The last time that I was in Tepeagua, it was February of 2020. It was less than a month before the world would shut down for the COVID-19 pandemic. This sign was up, taped onto the wall of the church. It wasn't until later when I came home and looked at photos that I realized how welcoming it really was that this sign is in English. I don't think there's a single English speaker in the town of Tepeagua. And again, it was so kind. It was really Christ-like that they made this effort for us to feel welcome on the Sunday that we visited. This was the reception line at the church in Tepeagua, the last Sunday that I visited here. You can tell that the congregation is here. They were singing to us and really made us feel so incredibly welcome as we arrived to hold worship services with them. There are quite a few projects that we have done between Atonement and the town of Tepeagua. And I do always refer to the town of Tepeagua. Although our formal partnership is with the Lutheran Church, everything that we have done has always been open to the entire community. And our basic philosophy is that there's no reason to build more barriers or walls between people. I'll talk a little bit more about our educational sponsorships and of course the water project and roofs. I do want to mention that we provide some health and medical support. We have built a small building referred to as the Health Hut. There are no doctor's offices, no dentists in Tepeagua, but with the Health Hut, we do have a community health worker who is there part-time, and occasionally doctors, vaccine clinics will visit the community and medical services can be obtained there. We also provide a small amount of money every month, and the town council essentially decides who has need of this money for medical reasons. Sometimes it is used for medications. A great deal of time it seems to be used for transportation. For example, we have some residents who are on hemodialysis. They need to transport into a larger town for that procedure, and this will help them with those transportation costs. One of our families at Atonement provided 30 Bibles. 10 Bibles are in large print, 10 are children's Bibles, 10 are regular Bibles, and Pastor Margarita keeps these at the church and uses these for Bible study. We have leveled soccer fields at various times. We have provided soccer equipment and uniforms. And probably most importantly, we share prayers for one another. We've developed friendships, we build community and solidarity, coming to know and understand what each other's lives are really like. One of our major projects has been the replacement of roofs. It was a major project to replace the roof of the church. In the picture on the left, we see Pastor Margarita. She is with workers that come from Habitat El Salvador. And in fact, the walls of the church had to be rebuilt to put on a roof that would really shed water very well for a building of this size. On the right, we see a home that received a new roof. I do want to point out that this home is probably one of the nicer homes in Tepeagua. It is also built of the same kind of old style clay brick. We see the ironwork that is actually in the windows. But this family is suffering from social issues that happen a great deal in many places, but they're really quite common in Central America. This home is currently owned by a woman and her 2 daughters. All 3 of them have a small child. The men who would have been part of these families are no longer present and no longer contributing to the household. The average adult male in El Salvador will earn $300 a month. So it's average, and remember that means half of the men earn less than $300 a month. It's much more difficult for women to find work. If they can find work, they're probably going to be fortunate to earn $150 a month. So these 3 adult women had no way to set aside enough money to replace this roof. And the community decided that rather than allow this house to degrade with leaky roofs, that they would be selected for one of the roof projects. Most homes are much more shack-like in Tepeagua. This is a view looking from the back of the church out over many homes. You can see the old broken clay tiles, and we can see that people have grabbed any piece of wood, any piece of corrugated metal, and have used whatever they can find and afford to patch these roofs. It's never really cold in Tepeagua, but they do have some pretty intense rainy seasons. And so the ability to stay dry under a roof is pretty critical in a home. This home was especially heartbreaking. This is a roof that was replaced this spring. When Habitat comes to Tepeagua to do the roof replacements, the directions are given for the people in the community to remove the current roof, and Habitat then comes in and puts on the new roof. When they put on a new roof for this homeowner, this is what they had. This home is headed by an elderly woman. Before her re-roofing project, she had taken these sheets of metal and stacked them together in a V shape, and that is where she was living. Now the community will help her, and they'll take these metal pieces and whatever else they can find, and they will begin to build some walls under this wonderful waterproof new roof. Of course, this is a dirt floor. Dirt floors are fairly common. You do find cement floors And in higher end homes, you will run into tile flooring. We typically sponsor between 32 and 40 students in Tepeagua. Our students range from preschool all the way through PhD programs, and we provide financial support, but we also provide some evidence that we care for this student and we care that they are successful in their education. I've looked at research from UNICEF, what makes students in underserved countries become successful students. And it turns out that it's actually the combination of financial support and then the evidence of caring for them as an individual that is most likely to keep them in school and make them be successful. In the summer of 2019, 4 of us were able to visit Tepeagua, and we took a survey with the community. Everyone in the community got to vote for their preferences. We asked, what would you most like from your partnership with Atonement? The answer that we received is the people in Tepeagua wanted to spend more time with us and get to know us better. While we do some really nice financial things for this community, it was really heartwarming that the desire to get to know us as people was their top choice. This is a day that Rochelle Bartles, Nicole Ostrowski, Jennifer Yord, and I were able to march in a parade through the streets of San Salvador with the Lutheran Church. We spent half a day doing this with various students and other adults in the community. You can see Pastor Margarita in full pastoral regalia. It was about 110 degrees, but it was an incredible time. Well, let's get back to the water and recall that when the people were left in Tepeagua, that the river was their source of water. But unlike all the songs about gathering at the river, it actually isn't that easy to get water out of a river. Some families do their laundry right at the river, but other families haul their water to their home, preferring to heat it and do their laundry at home. The banks of the river are covered with stones. They're quite steep. It's hard to walk down into the water and fill up your water container. During the rainy season, the river can get very high and the current can be very fast. So many times our families write of how dangerous they actually feel it is to go to the river and gather their water. The average family in Central America spends 3 to 4 hours every single day transporting water from whatever their source is into their home. I do want to point out that the river water in Tepeagua does not meet standards for healthy human consumption. So it was obvious as we began our relationship with the people of Tepeagua that water was a critical need for the community. In 2008, we partnered with them on their very first well. This is what this well looked like, and it's a pretty primitive well where we have a wheel that allows a bucket to be lowered into the well. This well was 15 meters deep. Recall that a meter is slightly more than a yard. Unfortunately, it wasn't long after this well was done that it became obvious that it could not meet the needs of the community. And it tested positive for E. coli contamination. Now, E. coli contamination is pretty easily treated if you have a water system where all of your water goes into a tank, you can add the chemicals to make that water quite safe. But you can't really do that when people are hauling up the water one bucket at a time and taking it home. So in 2014, along with an organization called Living Waters and a Rotary Club in Pennsylvania, Atonement drilled the second well in Tepeagua. This was quite an advancement. We see that there's a mechanical lever that can be pumped to get water. And although on first testing, the water seemed to be safe for human consumption, eventually it did again yield E. coli. So was no longer considered to be perfect for human use. And again, over time, it became obvious that this well was going to fail and would not meet all the water needs of the town. This well is twice as deep. It's 30 meters deep. Both of these wells, by the way, are still in use. You know, at this point, we really didn't know what to do to provide water for this township and for our friends in Tepeagua. And Dan Christensen stepped forward from the Atonement membership. Dan is very well placed in leadership in Rotary clubs. And he said, I think I can get you in contact with a Rotary club in El Salvador. Let's see what I can do. And at that point, we started a partnership with Whitnall Park Rotary Club, a San Salvador Rotary Club, and eventually the Rotary International Foundation, which is housed near Chicago. In the fall of 2020, the third well was drilled. The well cost $58,000, and Atonement provided $25,000 of this budget. This well is incredible. It is 125 meters deep. Remember, the first well was 15, the second well was 30. The third well is 125 meters deep. The engineers believe they hit an underground river. And the water comes out of this well at a rate of 100 gallons per minute. So there's abundant water, and it was perfectly healthful for human consumption. This is a day that they blessed the well. The well was actually on land that was owned by the Archbishop of the Lutheran Salvadoran Synod. Here he is, Archbishop Gomez, in purple. He has his arm around Pastor Margarita. The children that are all around them, the youth, are all students from Atonement. And I must introduce you to the lady in the black dress, because she will turn out to be an incredible player in this story. This is Ruth Ramirez. She is currently the chair of the town council. Ruth Ramirez has been working tirelessly to get water as well as new roads into Tepeagua. On this day, it turns out this is the second dress that Ruth Ramirez wore, because when they opened up the well, water was spraying everywhere, and Ruth Ramirez was in that water and completely wet, absolutely enjoying this particular day. So here we have this incredible well. What do we have to do with it? Because the water comes out at 100 gallons per minute, and you can't go there with your bucket to get water. So the water from the well needs to go to a pump. The pump will require electricity, and there will always then be costs associated with having water with this system. The people in Tepeagua anticipate that the average household will probably spend about $5 a month when the water system is completely in place. The pump will need pipes that will carry the water to a tank that will sit on the highest location in the town. The tank is up high because gravity will then be used to carry the water to every home and business in Tepeagua. From the geographic location, it's obvious that, excuse me, the north side of Tepeagua will have 122 homes and businesses, and then the south side of the tank, so a south branch from the tank, will provide water to 140 homes and businesses. Again, a system providing home water. When I do say the word business, I want to again caution you, there are no supermarkets, there are no factories. The businesses may be tiny little corner stores where you can buy cold soda, chips, and probably a data card for your phone. The two main businesses are two churches. Now, the plan at this point put forth by the water engineers required labor by the people of Tepeagua. And even using incredible labor from these folks, the cost of the project was going to be $420,000. And here we see the men in Tepeagua carrying bags of cement up to the tank, because the tank that will be built will be made from cement. Now, this is where Ruth Ramirez comes in to play. Ruth Ramirez approached an organization called ACUA, A-C-U-A. ACUA is a Spanish organization whose purpose is to provide water in underserved countries. 3 years ago, they had asked ACUA for help, and ACUA was unable to help them. But now that they asked for help and they had this fantastic well, ACUA came in and said, you know what, we have money to do half of the town. How about if we do the north side of Tepeagua, and we will leave the south side of Tepeagua to the plans of Rotary and Atonement. And in fact, ACUA came almost immediately. The pump and the pipes up to the tank, ACUA could only put in one tank, and it isn't big enough for the entire community. So we will have to put in a second tank with this plan, but ACUA has already started installing the water pipes that will go to those homes and businesses on the north side. So all of this began earlier this spring. And in conjunction with Rotary, we were scrambling. We had to redo the budget. We had to redo all of the plans. What we came up with at this point is that the cost of the project for our purposes went down from $420,000 to $216,000. We were actually invited to submit this entire amount to the Rotary Foundation. However, after a month review, they came back and asked us to please resubmit, perhaps in smaller pieces and with evidence of support by other organizations. So at this point, Atonement pledged a minimum of $25,000 to the project, and we are now looking at collecting this amount from friends like you by August 1st. We also have split our plan into two parts. So the project that we are proposing to Rotary Foundation with financial support from Hills Corners Rotary, from San Salvador Rotary, and Atonement will actually only do $120 worth of the project. We will put in the second tank, and we will put in the pipe systems so that there will be a water spigot at every home and business on the south side of Tepeagua. That was always the plan. And then the homeowner would be responsible for plumbing this water into whatever they wanted, a kitchen sink, a bathroom sink. It's estimated that most homes will ultimately plumb to maybe three or four outlets within their home. What we will not be able to do, that we will eventually want to do, is have a meter for each home. The meters would measure actual usage of water, and every home would be billed then for their actual use. Until we can get the meters in the second part of the plan, the homes will pay a flat rate to the Tepeagua Water Board. The other part of the final phase will give each of these homes and businesses a pit latrine and a gray water treatment system. So for toilet uses, most of these homes and businesses have dug a hole or a pit in the ground, and they squat over this, and this is what they use. Occasionally somebody has some sort of a seat or some privacy walls, but in a lot of cases it is simply a hole in the ground. The pit latrine will call for a septic tank sort of unit to be installed, meaning that these human wastes will be contained and won't be able to leak out into the environment. And then of course, a somewhat upgraded system with seating and some privacy will go on top of this pit latrine. The gray water treatment system takes water that is not toxic, but has been used already. So water from cooking, water from laundry, water from showering can all be recycled through the gray water treatment system and will come out for clean enough for other uses. The possible other use for this gray water that's been treated will be in gardening and irrigating home gardens. This isn't something that we see a lot of, although the temperature is always warm enough to support most garden plants. But I think if I had to carry all the water for a garden on my shoulder, I probably wouldn't be interested in gardening either. So we really anticipate that the pit latrine and the gray water treatment is going to add a whole new health dimension. I do want to point out that this isn't unusual in El Salvador. Estimates are that only 2% of people in El Salvador have access to a sewage system. So this means that all of this sewage is essentially just being dumped into the environment with no treatment. And of course, over time, that has to change. If you are interested in the details, this is the budget details of the original budget. Again, let me reiterate that the entire project for what remains for Rotary clubs, Atonement, and any other partners who would like to join us is $216,000. We have broken that into two parts, and our immediate goal is to raise the $25,000 from Atonement by August 1st. There's still no guarantee that Rotary will be able to fund the remainder of this. And so more would certainly be helpful. Rotary is an incredibly committed organization. And this is exactly the kind of project that they absolutely love to do. But Rotary budgets have been hit extremely hard by the pandemic, and most clubs have simply not been able to do the fundraising that they normally do over the course of the year. Aqua has started and is nearing completion of their part of the project. So the north side of the town is receiving their water fairly soon. The south side of the town is waiting patiently. But I did want to show you some of the pictures of the labor. Here we see, along with supervision, the people from Tepeagua are actually constructing the concrete tank. In the lower right picture, we see that they have leveled the land where the tanks will be, and they're actually using pickaxes to do this kind of work. The pipes that will carry the water to homes have actually been installed at this point to the north side by Aqua. You can see here that a trench was dug. They do have a really small excavator in Tepeagua at this point in time. You can see the pipes, PVC pipes, and here's a branch. Although there's an excavator to dig the trench, the people are filling in the trenches. Women also. Ruth Ramirez is organizing 20 people to work on this every single day. And they do this after they have already done their day job. So an incredible amount of work and labor and organization going on from the people in Tepeagua to make their dream a reality. So it's a critical time to achieve water in every home. Please, if you are able, donate. For those of you familiar with Atonement, use our usual methods of giving. You may always send a check to Atonement Lutheran in Muskego. Please, on the memo line, write El Salvador Well Project. And there is also a link that you can get from the Atonement website that will allow you to go through a little program called JotForm. And you can select options like PayPal for giving online. But if there was ever a time that you wanted to show support and recognize how important water is for life for our friends in Central America, this is it. So please consider. We try to travel to Tepeagua once or twice a year. Of course, the pandemic has put that on hold for a little while. Atonement participates in the Mission of Healing along with some other churches throughout the Milwaukee area. You're always welcome to apply to go to that. That trip is usually taken in February. But we're looking at starting our own trip out of Atonement. We're tentatively set to go in July's in the future and would probably spend 4 days. 2 days doing sightseeing and various activities with the people of the community, and 2 days spent doing service in the community. The community has especially asked for youth to consider making this trip, but believe me, they will be very, very welcome to older folks also. So I want to thank you for considering the work that we have done, and again, send out the request that you consider helping the people of Tepeagua at this point. Thank you.